Some days start like any other, and some days change your life in a heartbeat. I remember the morning that shattered everything, not because of my choices, but because the world decided to treat me as invisible until it couldn't ignore me anymore. My name is Layla Freeman. I'm a caregiver for the Whitmore family, one of the wealthiest and most prestigious families in the city. 32 years old, a single mother, and fiercely protective of my son, Jordan, who is only 3. Every day I walk into that mansion knowing that I am expected to be silent, efficient, and invisible. But my heart carries a weight no silver polish can wash away. That morning, I woke before sunrise, as I always did. Jordan was curled beside me, his tiny chest rising and falling in soft, even breaths. His toy dinosaur was clutched tightly in his hand, a symbol of his world and mine. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Mommy's got this. You'll be safe today." He stirred, mumbling something incoherent in his sleep, and I smiled, a private smile that carried all the fear, hope, and love a mother can feel in one fragile moment. By 7, we were walking the quiet streets to the mansion. My steps were careful, my body tense, and my mind rehearsing the 1,000 invisible rules I had learned over the years. In this world, every glance could be judgment, every tone a subtle accusation. I had learned that to survive, I had to move like a shadow, quiet, small, unnoticed. The Whitmore mansion rose before us like a fortress, polished and untouchable. Marble floors gleamed under chandeliers that scattered light coldly, like diamonds indifferent to the lives they overshadowed. Inside, everything whispered wealth. And I, a black woman from a world the Whitmores had never known, was expected to blend seamlessly into the background. Jordan played quietly in the corner as I worked, moving silently with rags and polish. Mrs. Whitmore glanced in my direction, her look sharp enough to cut through steel. "You know the routine," she said, voice slicing through the air. "Make sure everything is perfect, floors spotless, silver gleaming, and that child, keep him out of my sight." I nodded, swallowing my frustration behind a smile. My mind repeated one mantra, "I do this for Jordan," and then the day shifted. The lawyer arrived, a man whose presence carried the weight of authority and inevitability. He didn't greet me, didn't ask me how I was. He simply faced Mrs. Whitmore and said, "It's time to read the will." I froze, a jolt running through me. The Whitmores' wealth was immense, untouchable, untamed, and powerful, and I, the caregiver they had mocked for years, was about to step into the center of that storm. As the lawyer cleared his throat, every eye in the room turned toward me. The same people who had whispered insults, smirked at my mistakes, and called me help now stared as if I were a puzzle they could not solve. My pulse thundered. Every breath felt sharp, every heartbeat amplified. And then came the words that would change everything. "The estate will be divided as follows. Layla Freeman, the caregiver, will inherit the majority of the Whitmore fortune." The room went silent. I blinked. Misheard, surely. Mrs. Whitmore's face went pale, her lips tightening into a snarl of disbelief. Her eyes narrowed. The whispers started, rising like a tide of shock and anger. How could this happen? The lawyer continued, precise and unyielding. The late patriarch valued loyalty, honesty, and the love of a child above all else. Miss Freeman has demonstrated these qualities in abundance. My hands gripped Jordan's under the table. He didn't understand the numbers, the legal terms, or the weight of an inheritance, but he felt my joy, and he smiled at me with the innocent trust only a child can give. I realized in that moment that the humiliation, the mocking, and the cruelty I had endured for years had been shattered in a single instant. But it was only the beginning. The inheritance was not just wealth. It was secrets, betrayals, and a shocking truth that no one in that room could have expected. And as everyone processed the reversal, I understood something deep and terrifying. The world that had mocked me would now fight me for what I deserved. And the story, my story, was only just beginning. The silence in the Whitmore mansion after the lawyer's words felt heavier than any weight I had ever carried. People were staring at me, not with curiosity, not with kindness, but with something sharp, something dangerous. Shock can be beautiful in novels, but in real life, it is a weapon. And I was the target. Mrs. Whitmore's face was pale, her eyes narrow, and her lips pressed so tightly that I could almost hear her anger seething in the room. The family patriarch had been gone for only weeks, and here I was, standing in the center of the storm he had left behind, holding my son's hand like an anchor. Jordan doesn't know yet, I reminded myself. He doesn't understand the world. He's 3. He's my reason for breathing, my shield, my future. The lawyer continued reading, enumerating assets, properties, and trusts. The numbers blurred together. Money is supposed to impress people, but at that moment, all I felt was a surreal detachment. The shocking part was not the fortune. It was the recognition, the acknowledgement that loyalty, hard work, and humanity mattered more than pedigree or money. And the deeper shock came after the lawyer paused, his tone lowering, almost ceremonious. There are stipulations, certain responsibilities, certain truths must be observed. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I sensed the tension around me grow. Even the Whitmores, with their wealth and arrogance, seemed unsure how to react. They had spent years mocking me, laughing at my clothes, my accent, my skin, even my son's presence. And now I was untouchable, not because of wealth alone, but because of the truth they could not deny. That night, I went home with Jordan, trying to swallow my exhaustion. Sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced, revisiting every slight, every insult I had endured. The whispers of help, child watcher, not enough, each one echoed with cruel clarity. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt a surge of something new, power. Not just power over wealth, but power over dignity. But the world has a way of testing the fragile threads of life. The next morning, the mansion called. I had expected cold faces, perhaps a few stinging words, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Mrs. Whitmore herself summoned me to the study. I entered cautiously. The room smelled of polished wood and expensive leather. The sunlight filtered through tall windows, highlighting the lines in her face that had always seemed sharp to me. She looked like a woman who had controlled everything in her life until now. "You," she said, her voice low and tight, "do you understand what you've been given?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. "You don't, not really." Her eyes narrowed. "Do you know what it means to hold power over people who once looked down on you? Do you understand the responsibility?" "Yes, ma'am," I replied again, though part of me wanted to tell her she had no idea that the fortune meant nothing without freedom and respect, that no amount of money could erase the years of humiliation. She leaned closer, almost conspiratorial, her tone dropping. This inheritance, it's not just about money, it's about truth, about exposure, about reckoning. I swallowed hard. The words sounded like a threat, but threats are different when they are rooted in reality. And I was ready. Later that day, I discovered just how far the family's secrets ran. Late at night, while everyone slept, I found a set of old documents tucked in the patriarch's private study. Letters, journals, notes, all detailing manipulation, betrayals, and a web of hidden relationships. And at the center of it all was a name I never expected to see, my own. It seemed impossible. The man who had been gone had known me, respected me, and even trusted me more than his own family. He had seen loyalty and humanity when no one else had. He had left instructions that I inherit not just wealth, but responsibility over certain assets and over the truth itself. I read through the letters with Jordan asleep beside me, realizing that the people who had mocked me all these years were about to face their reckoning. But the gravity of it was not lost on me. With power comes attention, envy, and danger. The Whitmores would not let this go quietly. They would fight, sabotage, and attempt to humiliate me again, and I would not go quietly. I glanced at Jordan sleeping, his little hand clutching mine. His innocence, his trust, his presence, that was my true power. And I would fight for him with every fiber of my being. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned, I imagined, I steeled myself, because the next confrontation would not be polite. The next revelation would not be quiet. And the next move could change everything again. The following morning, I returned to the Whitmore mansion. Walking through the front doors felt different this time, the weight of expectation replaced by a quiet certainty. I was no longer invisible. Every step I took echoed with the knowledge that the world had shifted beneath my feet. Jordan held my hand tightly, sensing the change in me. Even at 3, he could feel the difference between fear and empowerment. His tiny fingers curled around mine as we entered the grand hall, the chandeliers scattering light across the marble floors, cold and blinding as ever. The staff froze as we passed, not in awe, not yet, but in cautious curiosity. Whispers trailed behind me. She's the one. She inherited everything. I didn't respond. I simply walked forward, letting them watch, letting the uncertainty settle into their bones. Mrs. Whitmore was waiting. Her posture was rigid, her jaw tight. She tried to hide it, but I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. The kind of fear that comes when someone realizes the rules have changed and you no longer control the board. "You," she spat, pointing a manicured finger at me, "you think you can take this fortune and just walk through my halls like you belong?" I looked at her, steady, unflinching. "I already do." The lawyer who had read the will yesterday stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, you may want to sit down," he said gently. "The patriarch's instructions are clear. Miss Freeman is to take control of certain assets immediately." Her face went pale. She tried to summon her usual arrogance, but it faltered, crumbling like a mask under pressure. I don't understand. How could he?" I didn't answer. Words weren't necessary. My presence, the quiet dignity with which I carried Jordan, spoke louder than any retort. Then came the first real shock of the morning. The lawyer handed me a thick envelope. "This contains instructions, details about the trusts and certain assets you will oversee. But there's more." Something your employer wanted only you to know. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling despite my attempt at composure. Inside were letters and documents, pages upon pages detailing the Whitmore family's darkest secrets, financial manipulations, betrayals, and cover-ups that no one had imagined. And then I saw it. A set of accounts, hidden properties, and even offshore investments, all earmarked for me, but with a stipulation that could ruin the family if exposed. I looked up. Mrs. Whitmore's hands shook and her elegant composure collapsed entirely. You can't," she stammered. I held Jordan closer. "It's not about what I want, it's about what's right." Her eyes narrowed. "You will destroy us. You don't understand what you've inherited." I smiled, faint, calm, unafraid. "I understand perfectly." The room went silent. Every staff member, every relative, every whispered observer in the house, all were frozen, realizing that the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. The mocking, the sneering, the little cruel jokes that had defined my life there, all of it was now on the verge of collapse. And then the next shock came. From the shadows of the hall, a man stepped forward. Tall, commanding, and imposing, someone I had never seen before, but whose presence carried authority and danger. He didn't introduce himself, didn't smile. His eyes, dark and calculating, swept over the room, finally landing on me and Jordan. "You've read everything," he said quietly, almost a growl. "You understand the rules." I froze. His words were simple, but the weight behind them could crush a person. "Yes," I replied carefully. "Good," he said. Then, almost to himself, he added, "Not many survive this unscathed." I didn't know if he meant me or them. The morning spiraled into chaos. The Whitmore family began to argue among themselves, voices rising, accusations flying. Staff whispered in corners, and I realized with a strange calm that the most humiliating moments of my past, the ridicule, the sneers, the mocking glances, had prepared me for this exact moment. I could endure anything now, but the man in the shadows had not finished. He stepped closer, and for the first time I noticed his subtle smile. "The fortune is not the only inheritance," he said. "There are truths here that will test your heart, but they are yours now." I glanced down at Jordan, his small fingers entwined with mine. The weight of responsibility settled over me, heavy but righteous. And then came the final, unexpected twist of the day, a letter addressed to Jordan. The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant, almost haunting. I opened it carefully. "Your mother has been the strongest person I have ever known. Trust her. Learn from her. One day you will understand." I blinked. My breath caught. I looked up at the man. He nodded once slowly and then disappeared into the shadows, leaving a room full of people stunned, terrified, and powerless, and a mother holding her son tighter than ever, ready to face whatever came next. The house felt smaller that morning, smaller and colder. I walked through the grand halls with Jordan at my side, each step echoing off marble and gold, a sound I would have once hated. Now it felt like victory. Every echo was a reminder that I had survived the mockery, the humiliation, the years of whispered insults. But I knew the battle had only just begun. Mrs. Whitmore waited in the sitting room, her posture rigid, hands trembling slightly. Her usual elegance had dissolved into desperation. I could almost taste it, heavy in the air. She tried to compose herself, but the moment I entered, I saw it, the fear she had so carefully hidden from the world. You think this gives you power over me, she spat, her voice sharp but brittle. You think money can erase who you are. I looked down at Jordan, smiling softly. It doesn't erase who I am, but it ensures you can't control me anymore. Her eyes narrowed, and she glanced at the other family members who were gathered like frightened spectators. The tension was unbearable, a storm waiting to break. Then the lawyer spoke, holding a thick folder. This contains the final conditions of the inheritance. It also includes disclosures the patriarch required for all family members. Certain activities will no longer be concealed. I opened it, carefully scanning the pages. The Whitmore family had hidden everything from financial fraud to betrayals of trust, but the patriarch had made one thing perfectly clear. The person they humiliated the most would hold the key to their exposure. Mrs. Whitmore gasped. How could you even? I didn't answer. Words were useless. I only looked at Jordan, who stood silently beside me, clutching my hand. The sight of him grounded me, reminded me of what I had fought for. I would protect him at any cost. Then came the unexpected moment, the twist no one anticipated. From the doorway stepped a man I had seen only briefly before, the one whose presence had sent shivers through the house earlier. His dark eyes scanned the room, finally landing on me. "You've read everything," he said quietly, his voice carrying authority and danger. "You know the rules." "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Then it's time to enforce them." Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. The Whitmore family's confidence shattered. Their wealth, their titles, their authority, none of it mattered. For the first time in years, they were powerless. The lawyer stood silently, watching the unfolding scene. "The conditions are clear," he said. "Exposure of past wrongs will begin immediately, and the family must comply. Miss Freeman will oversee the process." I felt a wave of vindication, but also a pang of unease. This was more than money. This was power, raw, unyielding, dangerous. And the Whitmores had underestimated me, underestimated the loyalty, intelligence, and courage that had brought me here. Then came the final revelation. The lawyer handed me another envelope, smaller, addressed in elegant handwriting. I opened it with care. Inside were photographs, letters, and documents, evidence of betrayal, manipulation, and deception. Among them was a note from the patriarch himself. "Layla, you have always seen the truth. Now it is yours to wield. Protect the child. Expose the deceit. And remember, dignity is the greatest inheritance of all." I glanced down at Jordan. He didn't understand everything, but he understood love and safety. And in that moment, I knew that nothing, no wealth, no cruelty, no betrayal could take that from us. Mrs. Whitmore's face went pale as I spoke, my voice calm but firm. "Everything you've tried to hide will be revealed. The choices you made, the cruelties you inflicted, it ends now." The room was silent. Everyone held their breath, realizing the magnitude of the moment. For years, they had mocked me, doubted me, humiliated me. And now, the scales had finally shifted. I turned to Jordan, smiling softly. "Come on, baby. Mommy's got this." He smiled back, innocent and unafraid, and for the first time I felt a deep, overwhelming sense of justice. Not revenge, not cruelty, just truth. And as we walked through the halls, leaving the Whitmore family to face the consequences of their actions, I realized something profound. The greatest power in the world isn't money or status or influence. It's the courage to stand up, to protect those you love, and to never let anyone make you feel invisible again. That day, the world changed. Not just for me or Jordan or the Whitmores, but for anyone who had ever been silenced, humiliated, or underestimated. And as we stepped into the sunlight outside, I knew that while the battle was over, the story of our courage, resilience, and dignity had only just begun. The mansion was quiet that evening, but the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. The Whitmores moved through the rooms like ghosts, haunted not by the dead, but by the truths I now held in my hands. Every secret, every betrayal, every slight they had thrown at me over the years now had a witness, and that witness was me. Jordan clung to my hand, small and trusting. I could feel his pulse, fast and innocent, a reminder of why I had endured everything. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about justice. This was about reclaiming the dignity that had been stolen from us for too long. Mrs. Whitmore tried to mask her fear with haughty composure, but the cracks in her mask were obvious. "You think you can control this house now?" she sneered, though her voice trembled. You think you understand what you've inherited." I met her gaze calmly. "I inherited truth. That's more valuable than anything you've hoarded here." Her lips tightened, and for a moment I saw her calculating, plotting. I didn't flinch. I had been underestimated my entire life. But now the rules had changed. Then the lawyer stepped forward, a hint of hesitation in his eyes. "There's more," he said, and handed me another envelope. "These are the final directives from the patriarch." He anticipated the resistance. He anticipated attempts to conceal the truth. He left instructions for how to expose the wrongdoing fully. I opened it slowly. Inside were letters, bank records, photographs, evidence so undeniable that even the Whitmores could not argue. But the last page made my breath catch. It was a note written in the patriarch's unmistakable hand. "Layla, there is one final secret you must know. The child you protect is not just yours to shield. He is the key to everything. Protect him, nurture him, and he will change the world you walk through. Trust no one but yourself." I froze. My eyes drifted to Jordan, and a chill ran down my spine. The key, I didn't understand entirely, but I sensed the weight behind the words. He wasn't just my son. He was the reason the past would finally be laid bare, the reason justice could not be denied. Mrs. Whitmore gasped, realizing that her power, her wealth, her influence, none of it could stop what was coming. You can't do this," she shrieked, desperation breaking through her carefully maintained facade. I let a small smile slip. "Oh, but I can, and I will." Suddenly, the doors to the study opened, and a man I had not expected appeared, tall, commanding, a presence that could silence a room without words. His dark eyes swept over the Whitmores and then landed on me and Jordan. "You have the evidence," he said quietly, but every word carried weight. "Do you understand what you hold?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I hold the truth, and that is more powerful than anything they have." He nodded. "Good, the rest is up to you." And then it happened. The shocking twist that no one could have anticipated. From the shadows, a series of letters and photographs began to circulate among the Whitmores, released through a legal intermediary. Every deception, every betrayal, every act of cruelty, documented, undeniable proof of everything they had hidden. The room erupted. Screams, accusations, pleas. The Whitmores realized too late that their wealth could not protect them from exposure. The staff, the neighbors, even distant relatives, all became witnesses. And I, the woman they had mocked and humiliated for years, stood at the center of it all, calm and unafraid, holding Jordan close. Then the lawyer handed me one final document. It was a transfer of power, a confirmation of my rights and authority over the estate. I looked at it and realized that I wasn't just a caregiver anymore. I was a force to be reckoned with. Mrs. Whitmore collapsed into a chair, her face pale. You've destroyed everything." I shook my head gently. "I've restored balance. You destroyed yourselves long before I arrived." Jordan tugged at my sleeve, looking up at me with those innocent, trusting eyes. "Mommy, we safe?" I smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Yes, baby, we're safe, and we're going to be stronger than ever." For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: true power. Not the kind that comes from wealth or status, but the kind that comes from resilience, love, and unwavering courage. And as the Whitmores realized that their mocking, their cruelty, their humiliation, all of it, had been powerless against the strength of a mother protecting her child, I knew that the story wasn't just about me. It was about every person who had ever been silenced, belittled, or underestimated. The final twist came quietly, almost poetically. Among the documents was one last note from the patriarch. "Layla, your son is not just your child. He is the future. Guard him, guide him, and let the world see that dignity and love are stronger than cruelty and wealth." I held Jordan close, feeling the warmth of his tiny body, the steady beat of his heart, and I realized the truth. The power of love, courage, and loyalty is unstoppable. The Whitmores would never forget this day. And neither would I. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Whitmore mansion, glinting off the marble floors, but the light felt different this day. It didn't shine to glorify wealth, it didn't highlight power, it reflected truth. And truth, I realized, could not be bought, stolen, or silenced. Jordan clutched my hand as we entered the study for the last time. The Whitmores were gathered, subdued, their arrogance replaced by shock, fear, and finally understanding. Mrs. Whitmore's lips trembled. You have no idea what you've done," she whispered. I looked at her steadily, feeling a calm I had never known. "I know exactly what I've done. I restored balance. I honored the life of a child, and I reclaimed the dignity you tried to strip from me." Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The evidence, the letters, the photographs, the financial disclosures spoke louder than she ever could. Every insult she had hurled, every snide comment about my background or my son's presence, now echoed back at her as undeniable proof of her own cruelty. The lawyer stepped forward, handing me the final document, the official confirmation of my inheritance and control over the estate. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what this meant, not just for me, but for Jordan, for the life we would now build. I glanced at my son, his bright eyes innocent and trusting, and I felt a wave of determination wash over me. This wasn't just wealth. It wasn't just power. It was justice, carefully crafted by someone who had believed in me even when the world had mocked me. Then came the final twist, the revelation that would leave everyone breathless. Hidden among the documents was a set of personal letters from the patriarch himself, addressed to me. His handwriting, flowing and deliberate, explained everything: the motives, the tests, the reasons why he had left the estate to someone outside the family. And in the last letter, he wrote, "Layla, the greatest inheritance is not money, but the protection of the innocent. Your loyalty, courage, and love for Jordan proved what the family never could, that true worth is measured not in wealth, but in character. Guard him well. You are the future." I held the letter close to my chest, tears pricking my eyes. Jordan tugged gently at my sleeve. "Mommy, happy?" I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, baby, very happy." The Whitmores watched silently, realizing for the first time that the woman they had belittled for years had not only survived their cruelty but had outmaneuvered them completely. The humiliation they had intended for me had returned to them, amplified by the undeniable truth I now held. And yet, I felt no satisfaction in vengeance. My joy came from something far more profound: the safety of my child, the restoration of dignity, and the knowledge that we were free from the weight of their mockery forever. As the day drew on, I made one final decision. I would not destroy them. I would not let anger dictate my actions. Instead, I would focus on building a life for Jordan and myself, a life filled with love, opportunity, and resilience. The Whitmores had been humbled. Their empire of cruelty and mockery crumbled under the weight of truth. And I had risen, not because of wealth alone, but because of courage, integrity, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Weeks later, I moved into a smaller, more comfortable home near the city, where Jordan could play freely, and I could reclaim the life we had been denied for so long. The wealth I had inherited was not just money, it was freedom, and I used it to create a future grounded in love and respect. One evening, as I watched Jordan run through the garden, laughing freely without fear, I reflected on how far we had come. The journey had been harrowing, filled with humiliation, heartbreak, and doubt. But it had also revealed something extraordinary: that love, courage, and loyalty can transform the darkest moments into triumph. And in that quiet, golden light, I understood a truth I would never forget. The most powerful inheritance in the world is not money, not titles, not influence. It is the strength of a mother who refuses to give up on her child and the courage to claim what is rightfully hers. Final emotional hook and YouTube call to action. If this story moved you, if it made your heart race, brought tears to your eyes, or reminded you of the power of resilience and love, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, share it with someone who believes in justice, courage, and second chances. Your support allows us to bring more powerful stories like Layla and Jordan's to life. Remember, sometimes the greatest victories come not from revenge, but from standing tall when the world tries to knock you down.